The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets of Dusty Hollow, painting everything in shades of brown and gold. It was market day, and the air hung thick with the smell of cattle, sweat, and desperation. Jack Callahan pulled his worn hat lower over his eyes, one hand resting protectively on his daughter's small shoulder as they navigated through the crowded livestock market.
"Daddy, can we see the horses?"
5-year-old Molly tugged at his sleeve, her bright eyes sparkling with excitement despite the oppressive heat. "In a minute, sweetheart," Jack murmured, his attention caught by the commotion near the auction block. Something about the gathering crowd made his gut twist with unease. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the square. "Folks, we got something special today. Not your usual merchandise, but a sturdy worker nonetheless." Jack's jaw clenched. He knew what special merchandise meant in these parts. The practice wasn't uncommon in border towns, where law was more suggestion than rule, where desperate souls ended up as bonds for unpaid debts. "Come on, Molly, let's go look at them horses now." He tried to steer his daughter away, but she'd already spotted what had drawn the crowd. A woman stood on the platform, her wrists bound with rough rope, unlike the defiant or broken looks he'd seen on others in such positions. She held herself with a quiet dignity that seemed to challenge the very ground she stood on. Her dress, though dusty and worn, had once been fine, the kind worn by ranchers' daughters, not servants. Dark hair fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, and when she lifted her head, green eyes swept the crowd with neither plea nor surrender. "Daddy, why is that lady tied up?" Molly's innocent question cut through the noise like a knife. "Hush now," Jack said softly, but his daughter had already pulled free of his grasp. Before he could stop her, Molly had pushed through the crowd, her small form darting between the legs of grown men until she stood directly in front of the platform. The woman's gaze fell on the child, and something flickered in those green depths, surprise, perhaps, or a ghost of maternal warmth.
"Are you hurt?"
Molly called up, her voice clear and concerned. "My daddy says we should help people who are hurt." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter ran through some of the men. The auctioneer scowled. "Get that young'un out of here. We got business to conduct."
"Molly!"
Jack pushed through the crowd, his heart hammering. When he reached his daughter, he scooped her up, but she twisted in his arms to keep looking at the woman.
"Is she dying, Daddy?"
Molly whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear.
"She looks so sad."
The woman's composure cracked for just a moment. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she looked at Jack with an expression he couldn't quite read, part warning, part resignation, part something else entirely. "She ain't dying, little miss," the auctioneer said with false joviality. "Just needs a new position, is all. Now, gentlemen, shall we start the bidding? Good worker here, young and strong, can cook, clean, tend to a household." "She's not an animal." Molly's outburst silenced the auctioneer mid-sentence. "You can't sell people like horses." Heat crept up Jack's neck. His daughter's words, innocent and true, laid bare the ugliness of what they were witnessing. He noticed how the woman's hands trembled slightly despite her steady stance, how she bit her lower lip when the men's gazes grew too bold. $20, someone called out. 25. 30, and that's generous for damaged goods, another voice added with a cruel laugh. Jack's fist clenched at his side. The woman's chin lifted higher at the words, but he saw the way her throat worked as she swallowed hard. Damaged goods. The phrase made his blood boil. Though he couldn't say why. He'd seen plenty of hardship in his 35 years, had learned to mind his own business and protect what was his. But something about this woman, the way she stood there like a queen despite the ropes, the way she'd looked at Molly with such unexpected gentleness, stirred something he'd thought long buried.
"Daddy, we have to help her,"
Molly whispered urgently.
"Remember what Mama used to say about being someone's angel when they need it most?"
"Sarah," his late wife's words coming from their daughter's lips hit him like a physical blow. Sarah, who died 3 winters past. leaving him to raise Molly alone on their struggling ranch. Sarah, who'd always seen the best in people, who'd made him promise to raise their daughter with kindness in her heart. $40. The bid came from Silas Brennan, a man known for working his help into the ground and worse. Jack had heard the whispers about what happened to the women who ended up in his employ. The woman's mask finally slipped. Real fear flashed across her face before she could hide it. Her gaze found Jack's again, and this time he read the message clearly. Not him. Please, not him. $50, Jack heard himself say. The words seemed to come from somewhere outside his body. The crowd turned to stare. Brennan's face darkened. 60. 75. Jack set Molly down, keeping one hand on her shoulder. That's near 3 months' wages. Callahan, someone muttered. You lost your mind. Maybe he had. But Molly was watching him with those eyes so like her mother's, full of hope and trust. And the woman on the platform had stopped trembling, though she still wouldn't look directly at him. $100, Brennan spat out. And that's my final offer. The sum was astronomical for a bonded worker. Jack felt the weight of every eye upon him. He thought of the money set aside for winter supplies, for the new plow he desperately needed. Then he looked at his daughter's expectant face and the woman's carefully blank expression. $125, Jack said quietly. Cash. A collective gasp ran through the crowd. Brennan's face turned purple. You're a fool. Callahan, throwing away good money on a... Watch your tongue. Jack cut him off with a look that promised violence. There's a child present. The auctioneer, sensing the tension and eager to close the extraordinary sale, spoke quickly. Sold to Mr. Jack Callahan for $125. As Jack made his way to settle the payment, Molly stayed put, staring up at the woman with curious eyes. What's your name? She asked. The woman hesitated, then spoke for the first time, her voice hoarse but melodious. Eliza Jane Crane. That's a pretty name, Molly said solemnly. I'm Molly Callahan. You don't have to be scared anymore. My daddy's real nice, and we have a big ranch with horses and chickens and everything. Do you like chickens? Something that might have been a smile ghosted across Eliza's lips. Yes, I like chickens. When Jack returned with the papers, he found his daughter chattering away while Eliza listened with bewildered attention. The auctioneer had untied her wrists, leaving angry red marks that made Jack's stomach turn. These are your papers, the auctioneer said, handing over the documents. She's yours now, to do with as you please. Though I'd watch her close them, that ends up here usually got reasons. Jack took the papers without looking at them, his eyes on Eliza. Up close, he could see the pride in the set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes, the way she held herself despite everything. This was no common servant or saloon girl down on her luck. This was someone who'd fallen far and hard. Can you walk? He asked gruffly. She nodded, though he noticed how she swayed slightly when she stepped down from the platform. Without thinking, he reached out to steady her, but she flinched away from his touch. I can manage, she said, her voice stronger now. Course you can, he replied. Stepping back, he understood not wanting to show weakness. Wagons this way. As they made their way through the dispersing crowd, Molly slipped her small hand into Eliza's. The woman looked down in surprise, then, carefully, as if she might break something precious, curled her fingers around the child's. Don't worry, Molly said confidently. Daddy bought you, so you're safe now. He won't let anyone hurt you. Jack saw Eliza's throat work again, saw her blink rapidly several times. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Thank you. Whether she was thanking Molly or him, Jack couldn't tell. He led them to his weathered wagon, lifting Molly up first before turning to Eliza. She'd already grasped the sideboard, preparing to climb up herself, but her legs shook with the effort. No shame in accepting help, Jack said quietly, pitched for her ears alone. Won't think less of you for it. She met his eyes then, really looked at him for the first time. What he saw there, a mixture of wariness, exhaustion, and the faintest spark of hope, made his chest tight.
"All right,"
she whispered. His hands spanned her waist as he lifted her into the wagon, noting how thin she was beneath the fabric. When had she last eaten a proper meal once settled? She moved as far from him as the bench would allow, which wasn't far with Molly sandwiched between them. As Jack took up the reins and guided the horses toward home, Molly kept up a steady stream of chatter. "We live about an hour outside town. It's real pretty. Miss Eliza, we got a creek that runs right through the property, and wildflowers in spring, and the biggest oak tree you ever saw." Jack let his daughter's voice wash over them, stealing glances at their unexpected passenger. Eliza listened to Molly with focused attention, occasionally nodding or making soft sounds of interest. But her hands remained clenched in her lap, and she startled every time the wagon hit a rough patch. What had he done? $125 money he couldn't spare for a woman he knew nothing about. A woman who might rob them blind and disappear come nightfall. A woman who looked at him like he might be either her salvation or her doom. And she hadn't decided which. But then Molly laughed at something, and Eliza's face softened with a genuine smile, the first he'd seen from her. In that moment, she looked younger, maybe mid-20s, and achingly lovely despite the dirt and exhaustion. "Daddy says I talk too much," Molly confided.
"Do I talk too much? Miss Eliza?"
"No," Eliza said softly. "I think you talk just the right amount." Molly beamed and snuggled closer to her new friend, apparently deciding that this was permission to continue her monologue about the ranch, her favorite horse, and the barn cat who'd just had kittens. As they left Dusty Hollow behind, Jack found himself thinking about Providence and promises, about the vows he'd made to a dying woman and the child who carried her spirit. He'd acted on impulse, driven by Molly's innocent faith and something in a stranger's eyes. Now he had to live with the consequences. Whatever Eliza Jane Crane was running from, whatever had brought her to that auction block, she was his responsibility now. The thought should have weighed heavier than it did. Instead, listening to his daughter's happy chatter and watching the way Eliza unconsciously leaned into the child's warmth, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope. It was a dangerous feeling for a man who'd learned to expect nothing but what he could hold in his 2 hands. But as the wagon rolled toward home through the desert afternoon, Jack Callahan allowed himself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he'd done more than save a woman from a bad fate. Maybe he'd saved them all. The Callahan ranch spread before them as the wagon crested the final hill, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. It wasn't much a modest 2-story house with a wraparound porch, a barn that needed new paint, scattered outbuildings, and acre upon acre of grazing land dotted with mesquite and scrub brush. But to Jack, it was home, carved out of the wilderness with his own 2 hands and Sarah's unwavering faith.
"There it is,"
Molly bounced excitedly on the bench.
"That's our house, Miss Eliza. And see that window up there? That's my room. And over there's where the chickens live. And—"
"Easy, little bird," Jack said gently. "Let her take it in." He watched Eliza survey the property, trying to see it through her eyes. Did she notice the fence posts that needed mending the way the garden had gone to seed since Sarah's passing? Or did she see what he saw, a place of honest work and simple dignity, far from the ugliness of town? Her expression remained carefully neutral, but he caught the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she'd been bracing for something worse. As the wagon rolled to a stop near the house, Jack's ranch hand emerged from the barn. Samuel Sam Torres, a weathered vaquero in his 50s who'd been with Jack since the beginning, stopped short at the sight of their passenger. "Boss," Sam said carefully, his dark eyes taking in Eliza's disheveled appearance and the faint rope marks on her wrists. "Everything all right?"
"Everything's fine. Sam?"
Jack climbed down and reached up for Molly.
"This is Miss Crane. She'll be staying with us. helping with the house and such. If Sam had opinions about his employer spending money they didn't have on a woman from the auction block, he kept them to himself. He simply touched the brim of his hat. "Ma'am." Eliza nodded, but didn't speak. She was studying the house like it might bite her, her fingers white-knuckled on the wagon's edge. "Come on," Jack said, offering his hand up to her. "Let's get you settled." She stared at his extended hand for a long moment before accepting his help down. The moment her feet touched the ground, she stepped back, putting distance between them. "Thank you," she murmured, the words seemingly automatic. Molly grabbed Eliza's hand with the casual affection of a child who'd never learned to fear strangers. "Come see your room. Daddy fixed up the one by the kitchen. It used to be for storage, but it's got a real bed and everything." Jack watched them go, his daughter chattering away while Eliza followed with halting steps. Sam moved to stand beside him. "Market day must have been interesting," the older man observed in Spanish, knowing Molly didn't understand the language yet. "You could say that," Jack replied in kind. Brennan was bidding on her. Sam's expression darkened. He'd worked for Brennan once, years ago, and still carried scars from the experience. "Then you did right. Whatever it cost. $125. Sam whistled low. That's the new plow money." "I know." "And the winter supplies." "I know, Sam." They stood in silence for a moment, watching as Molly led Eliza around the side of the house toward the kitchen entrance. "She's quality," Sam observed. "You can see it in how she carries herself. What's a woman like that doing?" Don't know. Don't need to know." Jack cut him off. "Whatever put her there is her business. She's here now, and that's what matters." Sam nodded slowly. "Sarah would have done the same thing." The mention of his late wife made Jack's chest tight. "Yeah, she would have." Inside the house, Molly was giving Eliza the grand tour with the enthusiasm of a child showing off her kingdom. The main floor was simple but clean, a large kitchen with a cast-iron stove, a dining area, and a sitting room with furniture Jack had built himself. Sarah's touches were everywhere: the cheerful curtains she'd sewn, the braided rug by the hearth, dried flowers in a vase on the mantel. Eliza moved through the spaces like a ghost, touching nothing, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warmth of the day. "And here's your room." Molly threw open a door off the kitchen with a flourish. The room was small but private, with a narrow bed, a dresser, a washstand, and a single window looking out toward the barn. Jack had hastily cleared it out that spring, thinking he might hire help for the harvest. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd ended up with help in the most unexpected way possible. "It's very nice," Eliza said, the first words she'd spoken since arriving. "Thank you." "There's clean clothes in the dresser," Jack said from the doorway, careful not to crowd her. They were my wife's. Might not fit perfect, but they're better than..." He gestured vaguely at her current attire. Something flickered in Eliza's eyes. "Your wife?" "She passed 3 years ago. Fever." He kept his voice steady through long practice. "Molly was only 2. I'm sorry for your loss." The formal words were softened by genuine sympathy in her voice. Their eyes met and held for a moment before Molly tugged on Eliza's skirt. "You should wash up. Daddy always says cleanliness is next to something important." "Godliness," Jack supplied with a slight smile. "Why don't you show Miss Eliza where the pump is? Then let her rest a bit before supper." "But Daddy..." "No buts, little bird. She's had a long day." As Molly reluctantly led Eliza outside to the water pump, Jack retreated to the kitchen to start supper. His cooking skills were basic at best. Sarah had been the one with magic hands in the kitchen, but he could manage beans and cornbread, maybe fry up some of the bacon Sam had brought from town last week. He was elbow deep in cornmeal when he heard a soft cry from outside, quickly muffled. Through the window, he saw Eliza at the pump, scrubbing at her wrists where the rope had left marks. Molly stood nearby. Her small face creased with worry. Jack stepped onto the porch. "Everything all right?" Eliza straightened quickly, pulling down her sleeves. "Yes, fine. The water is cold." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Jack understood the need for pride, for dignity in the face of humiliation. He'd felt it himself after Sarah died, when well-meaning neighbors had tried to mother Molly and manage his house, making him feel like half a man. "Supper'll be ready in about an hour," he said, pretending to believe her. "Nothing fancy, but it'll fill your belly." She nodded, ushering Molly back inside. Jack returned to his cornbread, but his mind kept wandering to those angry marks on her wrists, to the way she'd scrubbed at them like she could wash away more than just dirt. When they gathered for supper, Eliza appeared transformed. Sarah's simple blue dress hung loose on her frame, but it was clean and pressed. She'd washed her hair and pinned it back in a modest bun, revealing the fine bones of her face, without the dirt and desperation. She was striking, not beautiful in the conventional sense, but arresting, with those green eyes that seemed to see too much. "You look pretty, Miss Eliza," Molly exclaimed. "Doesn't she look pretty, Daddy?" Heat crept up Jack's neck. "She looks respectable." If Eliza noticed his discomfort, she didn't show it. She helped Molly into her chair with practiced ease, then hesitated, unsure where to sit. "There," Jack indicated Sarah's old place. "Unless you'd rather eat in your room." "No," she said quickly, then softer. "No, thank you. This is fine." The meal passed in relative quiet, broken only by Molly's chatter about the barn cats and which hen laid the best eggs. Eliza ate slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned not to take food for granted. Jack noticed how she cut her cornbread into tiny pieces, making it last. "When did you last have a proper meal?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Eliza's hand stilled. A while." "Well, we eat regular here. 3 times a day. Nothing fancy, but plenty of it." He pushed the plate of cornbread toward her. "Have another piece." She looked at the offered food like it might be a trap. "I couldn't." "Miss Eliza, you gotta eat more," Molly insisted. "You're skinnier than our barn cat, and she just had kittens." Despite everything, Eliza's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Well, if I'm skinnier than a mother cat, I suppose I'd better have another piece." As she reached for the cornbread, her sleeve pulled back, revealing not just the rope marks but older bruises, faded to yellow-green. Jack's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Whatever had been done to her, whoever had done it, that was over now. She was under his roof, under his protection, whether she trusted that or not. After supper, Eliza insisted on cleaning up, moving around the kitchen with an efficiency that spoke of long practice. Jack settled in his chair by the fire with Molly on his lap, pretending to read the week-old newspaper while actually watching their guest work. "Is Miss Eliza gonna stay forever?" Molly whispered, not quite as quietly as she thought. "I don't know. Little bird, that's up to her. I hope she does. She's nice, and she smells like Mama's soap." Jack's throat tightened. He'd noticed it too, the familiar scent of the lavender soap Sarah had made, still stored in the cabinet. It was unsettling, having another woman wearing his wife's clothes, using her things, sitting in her chair. But what choice did he have? He couldn't have left Eliza to Brennan's cruel hands, not with Molly watching, not with his conscience and Sarah's memory weighing on him. When Molly had been tucked into bed with a story and a kiss, Jack returned to find Eliza standing uncertainly in the kitchen, everything spotless. "You don't have to earn your keep every minute," he said. "This isn't that kind of arrangement." She raised her chin. "What kind of arrangement is it, Mr. Callahan?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Jack rubbed the back of his neck, choosing his words carefully. "The kind where you help with the house and Molly when you're able. And I provide room and board and safety. The kind where you're free to leave whenever you've a mind to, though I hope you'll give us a chance first. He met her gaze steadily. The kind where you can sleep sound knowing your door has a lock and nobody's gonna bother you. That clear enough? She studied him for a long moment, those green eyes searching for deception. Why? Why what? Why spend all that money on a stranger? Why bring me here? What do you really want? Jack sighed, sinking into a kitchen chair. After a moment, she sat too, though she chose the chair farthest from him. You want the truth. My daughter looked at you and saw someone who needed help. She's got her mother's heart, sees the good in everyone, wants to fix every hurt. And when she asked if you were dying, he shook his head. I couldn't explain to a 5-year-old why people were bidding on a human being like cattle. All I could do was make sure you didn't end up with Brennan or his like. That's a lot of money for a child's whim. Maybe. But Sarah, my wife, she used to say that God puts people in our path for a reason. Maybe Molly was supposed to see you today. Maybe you were supposed to come here. He stood, suddenly exhausted. Or maybe I'm just a fool who can't say no to his daughter. Either way, you're here now, and you're safe. The rest, we'll figure out as we go. He headed for the stairs, then paused. That door does lock. By the way, from the inside, use it if it helps you sleep. Later, lying in his own bed, Jack stared at the ceiling and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Through the thin walls, he could hear movement from the room below footsteps, the scrape of the lock being tested, the creak of the bed. Then, so faint he might have imagined it, the sound of muffled crying. He closed his eyes, knowing there was nothing he could do for her pain tonight. Trust took time. Safety took time. Healing took time. But time was something he could give her. In her narrow bed, Eliza lay rigid beneath the clean sheets, her door locked, her few possessions nothing but the clothes on her back, really already organized in the dresser. The room smelled of lemon oil and age. Not unpleasant, but strange. Everything was strange. The quiet, the full belly, the soft bed, the absence of fear. No, that wasn't quite true. The fear was still there, coiled in her chest like a living thing. But it was different now, fear of hope rather than harm, fear of kindness rather than cruelty. This Jack Callahan with his steady eyes and work-worn hands. What did he really want? Men didn't spend that kind of money without expecting something in return. But then she thought of little Molly, chattering about chickens and cats, holding her hand without hesitation. Children had good instincts about people. Molly wasn't afraid of her father. She adored him, clearly, the way a child only could when they felt completely safe. Please, don't chain me again. Eliza pressed her hand to her mouth, horrified. Had she really said that aloud when she had no memory of it? But the fever dreams from those final days were hazy at best. What else might she have revealed in her delirium? Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she would prove her worth. Show that she could work hard, that his money hadn't been wasted. Tomorrow she would begin repaying this unexpected debt of kindness. Tonight, for the first time in months, she would sleep without fear of the door opening, without hands reaching for her in the dark. It was a gift beyond price, and she didn't trust it at all. But exhaustion was stronger than suspicion, and eventually, Eliza slept. The morning sun painted long shadows across the ranch yard as Eliza emerged from the chicken coop, basket heavy with fresh eggs. 3 weeks had passed since her arrival, and she'd fallen into a routine that felt both foreign and comfortingly familiar. Rise before dawn, start the coffee, begin breakfast, feed the chickens while Jack and Sam tended the horses, keep Molly entertained and out of trouble, though the child had a talent for finding it everywhere. Miss Eliza, Miss Eliza, Molly's voice rang out across the yard, high and frightened. Come quick. Eliza's heart lurched. She set the egg basket on the porch and ran toward the child's voice, her skirts hampering her speed. She found Molly frozen near the woodpile, pointing at something in the shadows between the stacked logs. Don't move, sweetheart, Eliza said. recognizing the distinctive pattern even before she heard the telltale rattle. A diamondback, coiled and ready to strike, lay less than 3 feet from where Molly stood. "I just wanted to help gather kindling," Molly whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Is it gonna bite me?" "No, it's not." Eliza kept her voice calm despite her racing pulse. "But I need you to stay very, very still. Can you do that for me?" Molly nodded, bottom lip trembling. Eliza scanned the ground, spotted a long-handled hoe leaning against the woodshed, moving slowly, deliberately. She grasped it and positioned herself between Molly and the snake. "When I say run, you run to the house fast as you can. Don't look back. Understand?" "But what about you?" "I'll be fine. Ready, run." Molly bolted. The sudden movement triggered the snake's strike, but Eliza was ready. She brought the hoe down hard, catching the serpent mid-lunge. It writhed, trying to coil for another strike, and she struck again, then again, until it lay still. Only then did she realize the first strike had found its mark. Twin puncture wounds marked her left forearm, already beginning to burn. The world tilted slightly. "Eliza!" Jack's voice, rough with panic. He must have heard Molly's screams from the barn. "Christ almighty, you've been bit!" She tried to answer, but her tongue felt thick. Strong arms caught her as her knees buckled. "Sam, get the wagon ready," Jack shouted, already scooping her into his arms. "We need Doc Morrison now." "No doctor," Eliza managed. Can't pay." "To hell with payment." Jack's face was set in grim lines as he carried her to the house. "Molly, get the whiskey from the top shelf. Sam, forget the wagon saddle, Tempest. I'll ride faster alone." Everything blurred together after that. Jack's knife cutting away her sleeve, the burn of whiskey on the wound, his hands, surprisingly gentle, wrapping her arm, Molly sobbing somewhere nearby. "You listen to me, Eliza Jane Crane," Jack said fiercely, his face inches from hers. "You saved my daughter. You're not dying on my watch. Stay awake." She tried. She truly did. But the venom was spreading, making her limbs heavy and her thoughts scatter like startled birds. The last thing she remembered was being lifted onto a horse, Jack's arms secure around her, his voice in her ear, "Hold on, just hold on." She woke to lamplight and low voices, her arm on fire and her mouth desert dry. Someone was holding her hand, small fingers wrapped trustingly around hers. "She's awake," Molly's excited whisper. "Daddy, she's awake!" Jack's face appeared in her field of vision, haggard with worry. Behind him stood an older man with a medical bag, Doc Morrison. She presumed. "Welcome back," the doctor said kindly. "You gave us quite a scare, young lady. That was a lot of venom for such a small frame." "Molly," Eliza croaked. "Is she—" "I'm right here." The child's tear-stained face popped into view. "You saved me. You were so brave. Daddy says you're a hero." "Hush now, little bird," Jack said softly. "Let Miss Eliza rest." But Molly clung tighter to her hand. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have been more careful. Daddy always says to watch for snakes, and I forgot, and you got hurt 'cause of me." "No." Eliza found strength she didn't know she had, squeezing Molly's hand. "Not your fault. I'm just glad you're safe." Doc Morrison finished examining her arm. "You're lucky. Miss Crane, another hour and we might have lost you. As it is, you'll have some scarring, and that arm will be weak for a while, but you'll recover fully with proper care." He gave Jack instructions about changing bandages and watching for infection, then took his leave. Eliza tried to sit up when he mentioned payment, but Jack pressed her gently back. "Already settled," he said firmly. "Don't even think about arguing." When they were alone, except for Molly, who'd fallen asleep still holding Eliza's hand, Jack pulled a chair close to the bed. In the lamplight, she could see the exhaustion etched on his face, the worry that hadn't quite left his eyes. Why? He asked quietly. You could have grabbed Molly and run. Why put yourself between them? Eliza looked at the sleeping child. So small and trusting. She's innocent, she whispered. The world hasn't broken her yet. That's worth protecting. Something shifted in Jack's expression. Is that what happened to you? The world broke you? She turned her face away. We all have our scars, Mr. Callahan. Some just show more than others. Jack, he corrected softly. I think a woman who saves my daughter's life can call me by my given name. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jack cleared his throat. Sam found the snake, big one 5 feet at least. Would have killed her for sure, that close. His voice roughened. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You already paid it, Eliza said. That day at the market? We're even. No. His hand covered hers where it rested on the quilt the first time he'd touched her voluntarily since helping her from the wagon that first day. No, we're not close to even. The next days passed in a fever dream of pain and healing. Jack tended her with unexpected gentleness, changing bandages and coaxing broth between her lips when the fever spiked. Molly appointed herself chief nurse, chattering to fill the sick room silence and bringing treasures, a pretty rock, a bird's nest, drawings of stick figures labeled me and Miss Eliza and Daddy, a family. That last one made Eliza's eyes burn with unshed tears. Sam took over her chores without complaint, though she heard him muttering good-naturedly in Spanish about city women who didn't know to check for snakes. The barn cats took to sleeping on her bed, purring comfort. Even the ranch seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her to heal. On the 4th day, when the worst had passed, Eliza woke to find Jack dozing in the chair beside her bed. He'd been there every night, she realized, watching over her like a guardian angel in dust-covered boots. In sleep, the stern lines of his face softened, making him look younger than his 35 years. She studied him openly for the first time. Broad shoulders that spoke of honest work, hands scarred from building a life out of raw land, a face weathered by sun and loss, but still handsome in a rough-hewn way. This was a good man. She realized with something like wonder. She'd forgotten such men existed. His eyes opened, catching her staring. Heat flooded her cheeks. How's the pain? He asked, voice gravelly with sleep. Better. I can move my fingers now. See, she demonstrated, wiggling them slightly. Good, that's good. He rubbed his face, stubble rasping. Molly's been beside herself. She's convinced you're made of pure courage and moonlight or some such fancy. She's a fanciful child, Eliza said with a small smile. She's her mother's daughter that way. Sarah always said the world needed more dreamers, else it'd be nothing but dust and sorrow. It was the most he'd spoken of his late wife beyond necessities. Eliza sensed the gift in his sharing and received it carefully. She must have been special. She was. Jack stood, stretching. But she also would have boxed my ears for keeping you talking when you need rest. Sleep now. Real healing starts when you stop fighting it. But Eliza caught his sleeve as he turned to go. Jack, thank you for everything. I know I haven't been easy, haven't trusted like I should. But thank you. He covered her hand with his, careful of the bandages. Trust takes time. I know that better than most. Just don't go throwing yourself in front of any more snakes. All right, my heart can't take it. After he left, Eliza lay staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. My heart can't take it, just 5 words, probably meaningless, but they lodged under her ribs like seeds waiting for rain. When she was finally able to leave bed, Eliza found the ranch subtly changed. Or perhaps she was the one who'd changed. Molly shadowed her everywhere, chattering about everything and nothing. Sam nodded respectfully when they passed, occasionally practicing his English by asking her opinion on the weather or the horses. Even the chickens seemed friendlier, gathering around her feet when she scattered feed. And Jack watched her with something new in his eyes. Not desire, she knew that look too well, had learned to fear it. This was different, protective. Maybe grateful. Certainly. But something else, too. Something that made her pulse quicken when their hands accidentally brushed passing the coffee pot. The scar on her arm healed into a puckered reminder of that day. Molly kissed it once, solemnly. To make it better? And Eliza had to excuse herself to cry in private. When was the last time anyone had shown her such innocent affection? One evening, as she helped Molly with her letters at the kitchen table, Jack spoke from the doorway. "No one's chaining you. Not ever again." Eliza's hand stilled on the slate. "What?" "That night, when you were fevered, you said you begged not to be chained again." His jaw worked. "I don't know who did that to you or why. Don't need to know unless you want to tell it. But I need you to know to really know that won't happen here. Not while I draw breath." Molly looked between them with curious eyes. "Why would anyone chain Miss Eliza? That's mean." "Yes," Jack said simply. "It is." Eliza found her voice with effort. "I believe you." And surprisingly, she did. Somewhere between the snake bite and the recovery, between Jack's midnight vigils and Molly's kisses, she'd begun to believe, not completely trust that broken would take more than weeks to mend, but a start, a seed planted. That night, for the first time since arriving, she left her door unlocked. It was a small thing, barely worth noting. But Jack noticed when he made his nightly rounds, checking windows and doors. He stood in the hallway for a long moment, staring at that unlocked door like it was a miracle. Maybe it was in her room. Eliza heard his footsteps pause, then continue on. She pulled the quilt one Sarah had made. Molly had told her proudly up to her chin and closed her eyes. Tomorrow there would be work, bread to bake, clothes to mend, a little girl to mind, a household to tend. But tonight, she was safe. She was valued. She was home. The word surprised her, but she let it settle into her bones like truth. Home. Not forever, perhaps. Nothing was forever. But for now, for tonight, for this moment of grace in a hard-world home. Outside, a coyote called to the moon. The wind whispered through the mesquite, and on the Callahan Ranch, 3 wounded souls began the slow, careful work of healing together, one unlocked door at a time. The weeks following Eliza's recovery brought an unexpected transformation to the Callahan Ranch, where once there had been mere survival. Now there was something approaching prosperity. Eliza's industrious hands had mended not just clothes, but somehow the very fabric of their daily life. The garden, left to run wild since Sarah's passing, now bloomed with neat rows of vegetables. The house gleamed with a cleanliness it hadn't known in years. Even the chickens seemed to lay more eggs under her care. Jack observed these changes with a mixture of gratitude and unease. Standing at the barn door one morning, watching Eliza hang laundry while Molly danced around her feet, he felt something dangerous stirring in his chest, a warmth he'd sworn never to feel again after Sarah. "She's bringing the place back to life," Sam observed, appearing at his elbow with his usual silent step. "Haven't seen them sheets so white since Sarah," Jack finished quietly. "I know. That bother you?" Jack considered the question. Did it bother him? Seeing another woman fill the spaces Sarah had left empty, no, he said finally. "Sarah wouldn't want us living in dust and memories. She'd approve." Sam nodded sagely. "The little one certainly approves. Never seen her take to anyone like that." It was true. Molly had attached herself to Eliza like a burr to a saddle blanket. Even now, she was chattering away about something, probably her grand plan to teach the barn cats to dance, knowing Molly while Eliza listened with patient attention. "I'm heading to town for supplies," Jack said abruptly. "Keep an eye on things." The ride to Dusty Hollow gave him time to think, though his thoughts provided little comfort. The problem wasn't that Eliza had disrupted their lives. The problem was how seamlessly she'd fitted into them, like a missing piece they hadn't known they'd lost. And that scared him more than any rattlesnake. Town was bustling with its usual Saturday morning crowd. Jack hitched Tempest outside Murphy's General Store and pushed through the door, nodding to familiar faces. He'd made it halfway to the counter when he heard his name. Well, if it ain't Jack Callahan. The voice dripped with false sweetness. How's that new purchase working out? Jack turned slowly to face Mrs. Victoria Hutchinson, the banker's wife and Dusty Hollow's self-appointed moral guardian. She stood with two other women, all wearing expressions of scandalized delight. Mrs. Hutchinson, he said evenly, touching his hat brim. Ladies, we were just discussing your situation, Victoria continued, her thin lips pursing. Taking in that woman from the auction. People are talking, you know. People always talk, Jack replied, turning back to the counter. Don't mean I have to listen. But think of your daughter, Mrs. Eleanor Price chimed in. Growing up with that kind of influence. Why? Everyone knows what kind of woman ends up on that platform. Jack's hands clenched into fists. He forced them to relax. Turned back to face the women with deliberate calm. What I know, he said quietly, is that Miss Crane saved my daughter's life. Took a snake bite meant for Molly. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of woman she is. Victoria's eyes glittered with malicious interest. Oh, we heard about that. How heroic. Still, a woman with no family, no history, no references, and living under your roof without benefit of marriage. It's hardly proper. Mr. Callahan. Since when has propriety put food on the table or kept a roof overhead? Jack kept his voice level despite the anger building in his chest. Miss Crane works for room and board, same as any hired hand. Nothing improper about honest work. If you say so, Victoria sniffed. Though I wonder what dear Sarah would think. You leave my wife's name out of your mouth. The words came out sharp enough to cut. Sarah had more Christian charity in her little finger than you've shown in all your years of Sunday preaching. She'd be ashamed to hear you talk about a woman who's done nothing but work hard and show kindness to a motherless child. The store had gone quiet, other customers openly staring. Jack didn't care. He was tired of these vultures, picking at other people's lives for entertainment. Well, Victoria drew herself up like an offended hen. I was only trying to help, but if you want to expose your daughter to unsuitable influences. The only unsuitable influence I see is standing right in front of me. Jack interrupted. Good day, ladies. He turned his back on their shocked gasps, completed his purchases with hands that shook slightly with suppressed fury, and left without another word. But as he loaded supplies into the wagon, he knew this wasn't over. Victoria Hutchinson had a tongue like a rattlesnake and twice as venomous. By evening, the whole town would be buzzing with embellished tales. The ride home did little to cool his temper. He found Eliza in the kitchen garden, kneeling among the tomato plants with her sleeves rolled up and dirt smudged on her cheek. She looked up at his approach, and her smile faltered at whatever she saw in his face. What's wrong? Nothing, he said automatically, then sighed. Town gossip. Nothing new. Understanding dawned in her green eyes. About me. It wasn't a question. Jack dismounted, ground-tying Tempest to graze. Victoria Hutchinson and her coven of busybodies. Pay them no mind. What did they say? He didn't want to tell her, didn't want to see the light dim in her eyes. But she deserved the truth. The usual poison, that you're unsuitable, that it's improper, you being here, that I'm exposing Molly to bad influences. Eliza was quiet for a long moment, her hands still among the tomato leaves. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. They're not entirely wrong. The hell they're not. She flinched at his vehemence, and he forced himself to calm down. Sorry, but they are wrong. Eliza, dead wrong. Are they? She stood, brushing dirt from her skirts with quick, agitated movements. They don't know the details, but they're right about one thing. I'm not respectable. Not the kind of woman who should be raising a little girl. You're not raising her. You're helping care for her, and doing a damn fine job of it. Jack, No. He stepped closer, close enough to see the pain she was trying to hide. You listen to me. Eliza Jane Crane. I don't care what those harpies say. I don't care what happened before you came here. All I care about is what I've seen with my own eyes, a woman who works hard, who treats my daughter with kindness, who near died protecting her. That's respectable enough for me. Tears gathered in her eyes, but didn't fall. You don't know. And I don't need to. We all got our ghosts. Eliza, every last one of us. What matters is who we choose to be now. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the trick, the hidden motive. It hurt to see that suspicion, but he understood it. Trust, once broken, mended slowly if at all. They'll make your life difficult, she said finally. Molly's too. Maybe it would be better if I... Don't! The word came out harsher than intended. Don't you dare run because of some mean-spirited gossips. Don't give them that power. They stood there in the garden, the afternoon sun beating down, the tomato plants rustling in the slight breeze. Finally, Eliza nodded slowly. All right, but if it becomes too much... It won't. That evening, as Eliza served supper and helped Molly practice her letters and went about the ordinary business of living, Jack watched her with new eyes. She carried herself differently now. He realized, straighter, more confident. The haunted look had faded from her eyes, replaced by something approaching contentment. Was that really so threatening to the good women of Dusty Hollow? After Molly was in bed, Jack found Eliza on the porch, mending one of his shirts by lamplight. He settled into the chair beside her, the comfortable silence broken only by the whisper of thread through fabric and the distant howl of coyotes. I should pay you wages, he said abruptly. It ain't right. You working for just room and board. Her needle paused. You spent a fortune buying my freedom. That's payment enough. That was different. That was what needed doing. But you work hard here. Harder than any hired help I could find. You should be compensated proper. I have a roof over my head, food in my belly, and safety. That's compensation plenty. It's not enough. Not for all you do. The garden alone has saved us money, and the egg production's nearly doubled since you took over the chickens, plus all the household work, and watching Molly. I don't watch Molly for pay. Eliza interrupted softly. I do it because she's a joy, because she makes me remember there's good in the world. Jack's throat tightened. Still, I'll be setting aside wages for you. Might not be much at first, but it's yours. You need to leave someday. You'll have something to start with. She was quiet so long he thought she wouldn't respond. Then, so soft he almost missed it. What if I don't want to leave? The words hung between them, delicate as spun glass. Jack's heart stuttered in his chest. Then you don't leave. Simple as that. Nothing simple. You heard what they said in town. It'll only get worse. Let me worry about that. She tied off her thread, folded the mended shirt with careful precision. You're a good man, Jack Callahan. Better than you know. I'm a man trying to do right by his daughter. And by you. Nothing more special than that. That's where you're wrong. She stood, the shirt clutched to her chest. Good men are rarer than gold in this world. Trust me on that. She went inside before he could respond, leaving him alone with the night and his tumbling thoughts. Through the window, he watched her moving about the kitchen, putting things to rights for morning. Such a simple thing, a woman tidying a kitchen. So why did it make his chest ache like a broken bone? The next few days passed quietly, but Jack sensed the brewing storm. It came on Tuesday afternoon in the form of Reverend Thomas Edison himself, riding up the ranch road in his black buggy like an omen of doom. Jack met him in the yard, Eliza wisely staying inside with Molly. Reverend, he said neutrally. Jack. The minister climbed down, a tall scarecrow of a man with piercing gray eyes. I think we need to talk. If this is about town gossip, it's about your immortal soul and your daughters. Edison's face was grave. I've had several concerned parishioners approach me about your situation. My situation is my business. Not when it affects the moral fabric of our community. Taking in a woman of questionable virtue. Careful, Reverend. Jack's voice carried warning. You're talking about a lady who saved my daughter's life. And I'm grateful for that, truly. But gratitude doesn't excuse impropriety. You're living in sin. Jack, setting a terrible example for young Molly. Living in sin? Jack laughed, harsh and humorless. I've got a hired woman helping with house and child, same as a dozen other ranchers in the county. None of those hired women came from the auction block. None are young and... Edison gestured vaguely. Comely, it invites speculation. So this is about appearance, not truth. Sometimes appearance matters. What will you tell Molly when she's older, when the other children whisper about the scarlet woman her father took in? Jack's fists clenched. I'll tell her that her father tried to live by Christian principles, that when he saw someone in need, he helped them, that he didn't turn away from doing right because some folks might talk. Isn't that what you preach every Sunday? Reverend, love thy neighbor, show mercy, or does that only apply when it's convenient? Edison's face flushed. Don't twist scripture to justify. He was interrupted by the sound of horses. A lot of horses. Jack turned to see a group of riders approaching 5 men, led by none other than Clarence Brennan. His gut twisted with foreboding. What's this about? Edison. The Reverend had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mr. Brennan expressed concerns about the woman's legal status, whether the sale was properly conducted. He asked me to mediate. Mediate what I bought her freedom fair and square. Brennan dismounted, his cruel face wearing a satisfied smirk. Did you? Though see, I've been doing some checking. Turns out there might be some irregularities with the paperwork. Questions about whether the original debt was legitimate, whether she was legally bound in the first place. Since when do you care about legalities? Jack demanded. Since it affects the moral standing of our community. Brennan replied smoothly. Can't have people thinking we trade in stolen goods. Can we? Jack saw the trap now. Brennan wanted Eliza had wanted her from the start. This was his play to get her, wrapped up in legal threats and moral righteousness. The sale was legal. I have the papers. Papers can be examined, challenged, could take months to sort out. Meanwhile, the woman's status remains uncertain. Course, if she were to enter a more appropriate arrangement. Such as... Brennan's smile widened. I'm still willing to honor my original bid. Take her off your hands. Save your reputation. Everyone wins. Everyone except Miss Crane. Does her opinion really matter in this? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jack was saved from answering by the arrival of an unexpected ally. William Doc Morrison rode up, followed by none other than Judge Benjamin Franklin himself, the circuit judge who happened to be passing through. Gentlemen, the judge said mildly, quite a gathering. Having a party. Jack. More like a lynch mob, Jack replied. Brennan here is questioning the legality of a sale you yourself witnessed. Judge. Franklin's bushy eyebrows rose. Is that so? Well, Mr. Brennan, I can assure you the sale was entirely legal. I reviewed the paperwork myself at the time. Brennan's face darkened. Things can be missed, mistakes made. Are you questioning my competence, sir? The judge's mild tone carried steel underneath. No, but... Furthermore, Doc Morrison interrupted. I can attest to Miss Crane's character. She risked her life to save Jack's daughter. Took a full load of rattlesnake venom that would have killed a child. That speaks to moral fiber, wouldn't you say? Reverend... Edison shifted uncomfortably. Well, yes, but... Seems to me, the judge continued, that we're all here because a woman is working honestly for her keep. Nothing more. Unless someone has evidence of actual wrongdoing. Silence stretched taut.
Finally, Brennan spat in the dust. "This ain't over. Callahan, you can't protect her forever." "I can try," Jack said quietly. After the unwelcome visitors left, Jack found Eliza in Molly's room. Both of them huddled on the bed. Molly's face was streaked with tears. "They can't take Miss Eliza away, can they? Daddy, they can't." Jack sat on the bed's edge, gathering his daughter into his arms. "No, little bird, they can't take her." "Mister, Brennan's a mean man," Molly declared. "I don't like how he looks at Miss Eliza." Neither did Jack, but he kept that to himself. "Judge Franklin set him straight. It's gonna be fine." Over Molly's head, his eyes met Eliza's. She was pale but composed, though he could see the fear she was trying to hide. "Maybe I should," she began. "No." He said it firm enough that both females looked at him in surprise. "I meant what I said. You're under my protection. This is your home as long as you want it. But the trouble—" "There's always been trouble. Before you came. It was busybodies trying to marry me off to give Molly a mother. There's always something for small minds to pick at. Differences, now there's something worth fighting for." The words came out before he could stop them, hanging in the air like a confession. Eliza's eyes widened, and something passed between them, an understanding. Maybe, or a promise. That night, after Molly was asleep, Jack found Eliza in the kitchen, making bread for tomorrow. Her hands worked the dough with practiced efficiency, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "Talk to me," he said quietly. She paused in her kneading. "About what?" "About what's got you scared. And don't say nothing I know fear when I see it." For a long moment, she worked the dough in silence. "Then, my brother sold me to pay his gambling debts, to Brennan, originally. But Brennan, he decided I needed breaking in first, sent me to a place where—" She stopped, took a shaky breath. "I escaped before the worst could happen, but they caught me, beat me. Were taking me back when your sheriff found us. The rest you know." Jack's blood ran cold, then hot. "Your brother sold you." "Theodore always was weak. After our parents died, the ranch got into debt. He saw a way out that didn't cost him anything." Her laugh was bitter. "Family's supposed to protect you, aren't they? Guess nobody told Theodore that?" "And Brennan knew you'd escaped from him." "Why do you think he wants me back so bad? It's not about desire. It's about ownership. Control. I defied him. And men like Brennan don't forgive that." Jack crossed the kitchen in 2 strides, gently turned her to face him. Flour dusted her cheeks, and without thinking, he brushed it away with his thumb. "Listen to me. You're not property. You're not something to be owned or controlled. You're a free woman, and as long as I draw breath, you'll stay that way." She searched his face, and what she found there made her eyes fill with tears. "Why do you care so much I'm nobody?" "Nothing. Just another hard luck story in a territory full of them." "You're wrong." His hands framed her face, thumbs catching the tears that spilled over. "You're the woman who saved my daughter, who brought life back to this ranch, who makes Molly laugh and tends the garden and mends our clothes and makes this house feel like a home again. You're not nobody. Eliza, not to us." She made a sound, half sob, half laugh. "Jack Callahan, you're going to be the death of my hard-won cynicism." "Good. World's got enough cynics." They stood there in the lamp-lit kitchen, his hands cupping her face, her hands covered in bread dough. And Jack felt something fundamental shift. This woman with all her scars and secrets, her strength and vulnerability had become essential to him, not just for what she did, but for who she was. "I should finish the bread," she whispered, but made no move to pull away. "It can wait." "Jack." "Stay," he said simply. "Whatever comes, whatever those fools in town say or do, stay with us." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch for just a moment. "As long as you'll have me." "That might be a considerable time." "I'm counting on it." When she opened her eyes,
He saw his own feelings reflected there, tentative, fragile as spring ice, but real. He dropped his hands, stepped back before he could do something foolish like kiss her flour-dusted face. "I'll let you get back to your bread," he said roughly. "Jack," she called as he reached the door. "Thank you for standing up for me, for believing I'm worth standing up for." "Always," he promised, and meant it, as he made his nightly rounds, checking locks and windows. Jack thought about the battle lines being drawn. Brennan wouldn't give up easily. Neither would the town gossips. There would be more confrontations, more challenges to weather. But looking back at the warm light spilling from the kitchen window, hearing Eliza's soft humming as she worked, Jack found he didn't care. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth protecting. And Eliza Jane Crane, with her green eyes and steady hands and wounded heart, was worth everything. The autumn rains had been generous that year, leaving the desert blooming with late wildflowers and filling the creek that ran through the Callahan property. Eliza had discovered a favorite spot beneath an old cottonwood, where she would sometimes retreat for a few moments of solitude when the day's work was done. It was there that her past finally caught up with her. She was kneeling by the creek, washing out some of Molly's clothes, when she noticed something glinting in the mud near an exposed root. Curious, she dug it out a small wooden box, weathered but intact, with brass hinges gone green with age. Her heart stopped when she saw the initials carved into the lid, J.C. Jonathan Crane, her father. With trembling fingers, she opened the box. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were papers, legal documents. Her breath caught as she read the first one, a deed to this very land, dated 20 years prior, with her father's signature clear as day. "No," she whispered, sinking back on her heels. "It can't be." But it was. The papers told the story her father had owned this land before losing it in a card game to a man named Marcus Callahan, Jack's father. She realized, with growing horror, there were other documents, 2 receipts, letters, even a daguerreotype of her family standing in front of what she now recognized as Jack's house. Though it had been newer then, the porch unpainted. "Miss Eliza," Molly's voice called from the house. "Daddy's looking for you." "Coming," Eliza called back, her voice steady despite the tornado in her chest. She quickly closed the box and tucked it under her shawl. She needed time to think, to understand what this meant. But fate had other plans. As she hurried back to the house, the box slipped from beneath her shawl, landing with a thud on the porch steps just as Jack emerged from the door. "There you are? I was wondering—" He stopped, his eyes falling to the box. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "I found it by the creek." She couldn't meet his eyes. "I didn't mean to snoop. I just saw it in the mud and—" "You opened it." It wasn't a question. His voice had gone flat. Dangerous. "Yes. So you know." "That my father owned this land, yes." She finally looked up at him, saw the suspicion darkening his features. "But Jack, I swear I didn't know. Not until just now." Convenient. He bent to pick up the box, his movements sharp with barely controlled anger. "You just happened to find the one thing that proves your family's claim to this property, after living here for months, winning over my daughter, making yourself indispensable." "You think I planned this?" Hurt bloomed in her chest. "You think I arranged to be sold like cattle, to nearly die from a snake bite, all to— what, steal your land?" "I don't know what to think." He was pacing now, the box clutched in his hands. "First, you show up at that auction, no history anyone can verify. Then you save Molly." "I saved her because she was in danger, not because of some elaborate scheme." "Did you know—" He whirled on her, eyes blazing. "When you came here, did you know this was your family's land?" "No, I told you. I just found—" "Your brother—" Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Theodore Crane. He knew, didn't he? He sold you to Brennan. but made sure you'd end up here somehow. This was all a plan to reclaim—" "Stop," Eliza's voice cracked. "Just stop. Do you hear yourself? Do you really think so little of me that you'd believe I'm capable of such deception?" "I don't know you," the words exploded from him. "That's the truth of it. Eliza, for all the months you've been here, I don't really know you. You've shared bits and pieces, but there's so much you keep hidden." "Because it hurts." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "Because every memory from before is painted with betrayal and loss. My father died when I was 15. My mother followed 2 years later, broken by grief and poverty. Theodore inherited everything and gambled it away within a year. When the debts came due, he sold the only thing of value left me." She yanked up her sleeve, showing not just the snake bite scar, but others, older marks. "You want to know me? Jack Callahan. These scars are my history. Every one a lesson in trusting too much, hoping too hard. I didn't know this was my father's land. If I had, do you think I'd have stayed? Do you think I'd put myself through the torture of sleeping under the roof my mother designed, cooking in the kitchen where she taught me to make bread, loving a little girl in the same rooms where I once played?" Jack stood frozen, the box dangling from his hand. "Eliza, I found that box by accident. But you're right, I did keep secrets. Not about the land, but about the pain. Because speaking it aloud makes it real again. And I've been trying so hard to build something new here, something clean." Her voice broke. I thought you saw me as more than my past, but I was wrong." "Eliza, wait!" But she was already moving, fleeing to her room. The door closed with a finality that echoed through the house. Jack stood on the porch, the box heavy in his hands, feeling like the world's biggest fool. From upstairs, Molly's voice piped up, "Daddy, why was Miss Eliza crying?" He had no good answer for that. That evening, the house felt wrong. Eliza had emerged from her room to prepare supper and tend to Molly, but she moved like a ghost, speaking only when necessary. The easy warmth that had grown between them was gone, replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. After Molly was asleep, Jack found Eliza packing her few belongings into a canvas bag. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done weeks ago." She didn't look at him. "Leaving before I cause more damage." "You're not going anywhere. You can't stop me. You said it yourself. I'm free to leave whenever I choose." She folded a dress with precise movements. "Well, I choose now. Because of my stupid accusations, Eliza. I'm sorry. I reacted badly." "You reacted honestly." She finally faced him, and the resignation in her eyes was worse than anger would have been. "You don't trust me. And why should you? I'm just a woman you bought at auction. Someone with no verifiable past, no references, no proof of good character except what you've observed. When presented with evidence that I might have ulterior motives, you immediately believe the worst." "That's not—" "It is." She returned to her packing. "And I don't blame you. Trust is earned, and apparently, I haven't earned yours, despite everything the snake bite, the months of honest work, the genuine love I feel for Molly when it mattered. You doubted me. That tells me everything I need to know about my place here." "Your place is with us." The words tore from him. "I was an idiot. Yes, I jumped to conclusions. But can you blame me? This land is all I have to give Molly. If there's even a chance someone could take it." "I would never take anything from Molly." The fierce protectiveness in her voice made him ache. "Never. That little girl is the brightest light in my world. The fact that you think I could hurt her shows how little you understand me." Jack ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Then help me understand. Stop hiding behind walls and secrets. Tell me who you really are." Eliza sank onto the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. "You want the truth, all of it?" "Yes." "Fine." She took a deep breath. "My full name is Eliza Jane Crane. My father was Jonathan Crane, a dreamer who came west with big plans and little sense. He won this land in a poker game from the previous owner, then lost it the same way to your father 5 years later. We moved to a smaller ranch outside Tucson, where he tried to start over. He died when his horse spooked and threw him. He broke his neck. Her voice was steady, almost emotionless. My mother, Marie, never recovered from losing him. She tried to keep the ranch going, but she didn't have the strength or knowledge. Theodore was no help. He'd inherited father's love of cards, but not his luck. When mother died, I was 17. Theodore was 22 and already deep in debt. She paused, fingers twisting in her lap. For 3 years, I kept us afloat. I worked myself to the bone, hired out for sewing and washing, sold everything valuable we owned. But it wasn't enough. Theodore's debts grew larger, the creditors more insistent. Then Brennan came calling. Jack's fists clenched at the name. He offered to clear Theodore's debts in exchange for an arrangement. Theodore agreed without consulting me. When I refused, when I tried to run. She touched her ribs unconsciously. They made it clear that refusing wasn't an option. I was to be delivered to Brennan's establishment for training before taking up my duties. Establishment? A brothel, she said bluntly. Outside the town limits, where law doesn't reach. I escaped during transport, but they caught me, beat me. Were dragging me back when your sheriff found us and decided the whole thing looked suspicious enough to intervene. Since I couldn't prove I wasn't legally bound, Theodore had signed papers they put me up for auction to recover the supposed debt. You know the rest. The room fell silent except for the wind rattling the windows. Jack felt sick. All those times he'd noticed her flinch from sudden movements, her initial terror of closed doors. The way she still sometimes looked surprised when asked for her opinion, it all made horrible sense now. I didn't know about this land being father's until today, she continued. I recognized the house when we arrived. Yes, but I thought it was just coincidence. Or maybe I was misremembering. I was young when we lived here, and trauma has a way of playing tricks with memory. Finding that box, it was like seeing a ghost. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. For what was done to you, for how I reacted, for all of it. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Do you know what the cruelest part is? For the first time since Mother died, I felt safe here, valued, like I belonged somewhere. Molly made me remember what unconditional love felt like. And you... She stopped, shook her head. It doesn't matter now. It does matter. Jack crossed the room, knelt in front of her so she had to meet his eyes. Eliza, I'm a fool. When I saw that box, all I could think was that I was going to lose everything. This land, this life I've built for Molly, and losing you, the thought that you'd played us false that hurt worse than the rest combined. Jack, let me finish. You asked why I care so much. It's because somewhere between you saving Molly and making this house a home again, I fell in love with you, and that terrified me, because the last woman I loved died and left me broken. When I saw a chance that you might leave too, might take everything with you, I lashed out. It was cowardly and cruel, and I'm sorry. Eliza's eyes were wide, tears gathering but not falling. You love me. Have for a while now, though I've been too stubborn to admit it. Sam's been laughing at me for weeks, says it's obvious to everyone but us. He took her hands carefully, aware of how fragile this moment was. I know I've got no right to ask, after what I said today, but please don't leave. Not like this. I don't know if I can stay, she whispered. Every time I look at something in this house, I see my mother's ghost. Now you'll always wonder if I'm after the land? No. His grip on her hands tightened. I won't, because I know you now. Eliza Jane Crane, really know you. You're the woman who faces down snakes for children who aren't even yours, who works until her hands bleed to prove her worth, who treats a bitter old vaquero with such kindness he actually smiles,
who survived betrayal and brutality, but still has gentleness to spare for a little girl who needs a mother's love. I'm not her mother. No, but you could be. The words hung between them, heavy with promise. Eliza pulled her hands free, stood and walked to the window. Don't offer things you don't mean. I never say what I don't mean. Jack rose too, moved to stand behind her, but didn't touch. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Hell, after how I acted. I've got no right to ask at all. But think about it. This land, your father lost it fair. Mine won it fair. But maybe it's meant to be yours again, just in a different way. She turned then, searching his face. And if Brennan comes back, if Theodore appears with legal claims, if the town turns uglier, then we face it together, as a family. Family? She repeated softly, like she was tasting the word. I barely remember what that means. Stay and I'll show you. Let us show you. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sam's voice called urgently. Boss Ryder's coming. Looks like trouble. Jack cursed under his breath. How many? 6, maybe 7. Moving fast. Get the rifles. He turned to Eliza. Stay here. Lock the door. Jack, please, just this once. Don't argue. He cupped her face briefly. We're not done talking, but right now, I need to know you're safe. He was gone before she could respond, his boots thundering down the stairs. Eliza moved to the window, peering through the curtains. In the moonlight, she could make out the approaching riders. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized the lead figure. Theodore. Her brother had finally come to collect what he thought was his. She heard Jack and Sam take positions on the porch, heard the riders thunder into the yard, through the thin walls. Theodore's voice carried clearly. Evening, Callahan, I believe you have something that belongs to me. Nothing here belongs to you, Crane. Jack replied evenly. Now, that's where you're wrong. See, I've been doing some research. Turns out this land has an interesting history. My father owned it once. And lost it, fair and square, from what I hear. Maybe, maybe not, but that's not what I'm here for tonight. Theodore's voice turned sly. I'm here for my sister. She's not your property. Isn't she? I've got papers saying otherwise. Signed and witnessed. She's bound to me until her debt is paid. I paid it, at the auction. Did you? Because I've got a judge in Phoenix who says that auction wasn't legal. Says she should be returned to her rightful guardian, me, immediately. Eliza's hands clenched into fists. More lies. More manipulation. Theodore had always been good at twisting the law to suit his purposes. And then what? Jack's voice was dangerous. You sell her to Brennan again, or someone worse. That's family business? None of your concern? I'm making it my concern. There was a pause. Then Theodore laughed, ugly and knowing. Oh, I see. You've been sampling the goods. Can't say I blame you. She always was pretty. Even beat up. Tell me, Callahan, is she worth all this trouble? The gunshot was sudden, shockingly loud. Eliza gasped, started for the door, then froze as Jack's voice carried clearly. Next one won't be a warning shot. Get off my land. Crane, don't come back. You can't protect her forever, Theodore snarled. She's mine by rights. The law will see it my way. Maybe, but tonight, the only law here is what I say. And I say you've got 10 seconds to clear out before I forget my Christian charity. There was shouting, cursing, but gradually the sound of hoofbeats retreated. Eliza sagged against the wall, relief and dread warring in her chest. Theodore wouldn't give up. He never did when he thought there was money to be made. Jack appeared in her doorway moments later, rifle still in hand. You all right? You shot at my brother. Shot over his head, though I was tempted to aim lower. He set the rifle aside, crossed to her. Eliza, what he said was probably true. He's always been good at finding corrupt judges, making illegal things look legal. He'll be back with papers.
Maybe a marshal who owes him favors. Then we'll deal with it. How you can't shoot everyone who comes for me? Watch me. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her heart ache. I won't let you risk everything for me. You have Molly to think about. I am thinking about her. Thinking about how she'd never forgive me if I let someone take you away. Thinking about how she needs you. He paused. How we both do. Jack, marry me. The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. Eliza stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated, more steadily now. A wife can't be sold or claimed by anyone but her husband. It would protect you legally. You'd marry me to spite my brother. No. He caught her hands. I'd marry you because I love you. Because Molly loves you. Because this house hasn't been a home since Sarah died. But somehow you've made it one again. The legal protection is just practical benefits? Practical benefits. She echoed faintly. Jack Callahan, that might be the least romantic proposal in the history of proposals. I'm not good with words. Never have been. He pulled her closer. But I mean it. Eliza, I know it's fast. Know you've got no reason to trust me after today, but marry me. Make this official, legal, binding. Be Molly's mother and my wife and let anyone try to take you then. She searched his face, looking for doubt, for regret, for anything but the steady certainty she found there. The town will talk. They already think I'm a fallen woman. Marriage won't change that. Don't care about the town. Molly will be the happiest child in Arizona. She's been praying for a mother every night since she could talk. I don't even know how to be a wife. The last man who owned me? No one owns you. His voice was fierce. Not anymore. Not ever again. As my wife, you'd be my partner, equal. Free to come and go as you please, though I hope you'll choose to stay. And tonight when you thought I'd schemed to steal your land? He winced. I told you, I was a fool. Fear makes idiots of us all, and I was terrified of losing you, of being played false by someone I'd come to trust. It won't happen again. You can't promise that. I can promise to try, to do better, to trust first and doubt second. He brought her hands to his lips, kissed each palm. I can promise to love you with whatever heart I've got left, to stand between you and anyone who tries to harm you, to give you a home and a family and a place to belong, if you'll have me. Eliza felt the walls she'd built so carefully beginning to crumble. This man, this good, stubborn, imperfect man was offering her everything she'd never dared dream of. Safety, love, family, home. I don't have a dowry, no family connections, nothing to bring to a marriage but myself and too many scars. You bring yourself, that's all I want. You barely know me. I know enough. The rest we'll learn as we go. She was crying now, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. If I say yes when Theodore comes back, when the town gossips, when things get hard, we'll face it together. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. Say yes, Eliza. Take my name and let me protect you proper. Let me love you the way you deserve. And if I can't love you back, not the way a wife should, you already do, he said simply. I see it when you look at Molly, when you tend the garden, when you sit on the porch in the evening and your face softens with something like peace. You love us, Eliza, maybe not the same as I love you. Not yet, but it's there. She closed her eyes, swaying toward him. Everything in her screamed to run, to protect herself, to not risk the pain that came with hope. But stronger than fear was the longing for what he offered. A place to belong, a child to mother, a man who saw her truly and wanted her anyway. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Jack Callahan, God help us both. His kiss was answer enough gentle and fierce at once, full of promise and relief and joy. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow,
he said. "We'll ride to town. Find Judge Franklin before he leaves. Make it official before Theodore can regroup."
That soon?
Too soon. She thought of Theodore out there in the dark, plotting, of Brennan, still wanting what he'd been denied, of all the forces arrayed against them, trying to tear apart this fragile happiness. "No," she said firmly. "Not too soon at all." A small sound from the doorway made them both turn. Molly stood there in her nightgown, rubbing sleepy eyes. "I heard shouting. Are the bad men gone?" Jack scooped her up, settling her on his hip. "Yeah, little bird, they're gone." "Good." She looked between them, suddenly more alert. "Were you kissing Miss Eliza?" Heat flooded Eliza's cheeks. "Molly, we were just—" "Are you gonna get married?" The child's face lit up with hope. "Are you gonna be my mama for real?" Jack and Eliza exchanged glances. "Would you like that?" Eliza asked carefully. "More than anything in the whole world." Molly threw her arms around Eliza's neck. "I already been telling everyone at church you're my mama anyway." Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the fears still lurking, Eliza found herself laughing. "Have you now?" "Uh-huh. Bobby Morrison said I was lying, but I told him he was just jealous 'cause his mama can't make biscuits like you." She pulled back, suddenly serious. "You won't leave now, right, even if Uncle Theodore comes back?" "Uncle Theodore!" Jack's voice was sharp. That's what the mean man called himself, said he was going to take Miss Eliza away. Molly's arms tightened around Eliza's neck. "But I won't let him. I'll bite him if he tries." "No biting necessary, little bird," Jack said. "Miss Eliza's staying right here. We're getting married tomorrow, and then she'll be your mama official. Tomorrow, really truly, really truly." Molly whooped with joy, bouncing so hard Jack nearly dropped her. "Can I wear my Sunday dress? Can I carry flowers? Can we have cake?" "Yes to all three," Eliza promised, heart so full it might burst. "Now back to bed, or you'll be too tired to enjoy it." As they tucked Molly back into bed together, like the family they were about to become, Eliza marveled at the turn her life had taken. This morning she'd been a hired woman with a dark past. Tomorrow she'd be a wife, a mother, a woman with legal protection and a loving family. Theodore could come. Brennan could rage. The town could gossip. She had something now that no force on earth could take away: a home built on love, not land, a family bound by choice, not blood, and a future bright with possibility, no matter what shadows the past might cast. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, as if Arizona itself blessed the union. Eliza stood before the small mirror in her room. Wearing Sarah's best dress, a deep blue cotton that Molly had insisted was perfect, because it matches your eyes when you're happy. Her hands trembled slightly as she pinned up her hair. "You look beautiful," came a soft voice from the doorway. Doc Morrison's wife, Mary, entered with a small bouquet of desert wildflowers. "Jack's a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Eliza murmured, accepting the flowers gratefully. Mary had been one of the few town women to show her kindness. Perhaps because she too knew what it was like to be an outsider. She'd come from Boston 20 years ago and never quite fit the frontier mold. Nervous. Terrified. Eliza admitted. Not of Jack or marriage, but I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For Theodore to appear. Or Brennan. Or... "Then we'd best get you married quickly," Mary said practically. "Judge Franklin's waiting, and Jack's wearing a hole in the church floor with his pacing." The small church was nearly empty, just the witnesses required by law and a few brave souls who defied town gossip to attend. Sam stood as Jack's witness, dressed in his finest shirt and looking uncomfortable about it. Molly bounced beside him in her Sunday dress, clutching a basket of flower petals she'd been expressly told not to throw until the right moment. But it was Jack who stole Eliza's breath. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair,
and wore a suit she'd never seen before. When their eyes met across the small space, his face transformed with a smile so tender it made her knees weak. "Dearly beloved," Judge Franklin began, his voice carrying the authority of law and faith combined. "We gather here to witness the union of Jack Callahan and Eliza Jane Crane." The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional, but when Jack promised to love, honor, and cherish her, his voice rough with emotion, Eliza felt the words sink into her bones like a blessing. When she promised to honor and obey words that might have choked her weeks ago, they came freely, because this was Jack, who'd never asked for obedience, only partnership. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Judge Franklin declared. "You may kiss your bride." Jack's hands framed her face with infinite gentleness. "Hello, Mrs. Callahan," he murmured, just for her. "Hello, Mr. Callahan," she whispered back. Their kiss was brief, appropriate for public viewing, but it promised more. Molly exploded with joy, throwing her flower petals with enthusiasm that made the sparse congregation laugh. "Does this mean I can call you Mama now without the miss?" she demanded. "Yes, sweetheart," Eliza said, tears threatening. "Just Mama now." They were signing the marriage certificate when the church doors burst open. Eliza's blood froze as Theodore strode in, flanked by two rough-looking men, and her heart sank a man wearing a marshal's badge. "Stop," Theodore commanded. "This wedding is illegal." Jack stepped protectively in front of Eliza. "Too late. Crane. We're already married." Judge Franklin himself performed the ceremony. A ceremony based on fraud. Theodore produced a sheaf of papers. "Marshal Colt. Arrest that woman for theft and breach of contract." The marshal, a weathered man named Samuel Colt, looked uncomfortable. "Now, Mr. Crane, I told you I'd investigate your claims, but arresting a woman on her wedding day, she's bound to me by legal contract." Theodore waved the papers. "Signed and witnessed. She ran away before fulfilling her obligations, which makes her a thief and a runaway servant." "I am no one's servant," Eliza said, stepping around Jack despite his attempt to shield her. "Whatever papers you forged." "Forged?" Theodore's eyes glittered with malice. "These are completely legitimate. You became my ward when our parents died. I had every right to arrange employment for you." "Employment?" Jack's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you call selling her to a brothel?" Gasps rippled through the small congregation. Theodore's face darkened. "I arranged a position at a legitimate establishment. If she misunderstood the nature of the work..." "Enough." Judge Franklin's voice cut through the growing tension. "Marshal Colt, may I see these supposed contracts?" The marshal handed over the papers reluctantly. Judge Franklin studied them, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. "These are dated 3 years ago." "Yes, Your Honor. When our parents died and Eliza became my responsibility." "And how old was Miss Crane, excuse me? Mrs. Callahan at that time?" Theodore hesitated. 17. 17. The judge's voice was thoughtful. "Tell me, Mr. Crane, what does Arizona law say about contracts signed by minor females without independent counsel?" The color drained from Theodore's face. She wasn't a minor. She was 17. The judge repeated, "Which, as I'm sure you know, means any contract regarding her person or labor required either parental consent, which was impossible, or approval from a court-appointed guardian who was not a beneficiary of said contract. Were you a beneficiary, Mr. Crane?" There were debts. "So you benefited financially from this arrangement, making the contract void." Judge Franklin handed the papers back to the marshal. "Furthermore, even if the contract were valid, which it is not, marriage supersedes any prior claim. Mrs. Callahan is now under her husband's protection, legally and completely."
This is outrageous, Theodore sputtered. She owes me. Nothing, Jack interrupted. She owes you nothing but contempt. He pulled out a leather pouch, heavy with coin. But I'll pay you to leave and never come back. $500. More than you'd have gotten from Brennan. Theodore's eyes fixed on the money with naked greed. 1,000. 500. Take it and sign a document renouncing any claim on Eliza. Or leave with nothing and face charges for attempting to sell a minor into prostitution. You can't prove. Can't I? Doc Morrison stepped forward. I treated Mrs. Callahan for injuries consistent with forced captivity. I'd be happy to testify about their nature and likely cause. As would I, Mary Morrison added. A woman knows when another woman's been brutalized. And I, Sam said, his weathered face stern. No men who worked at Brennan's establishment. They'd testify about what kind of employment was expected. Theodore looked around the church, seeing his support evaporate. Even his hired muscle was edging toward the door, unwilling to face a united town. Marshal, he appealed desperately. Samuel Colt shook his head. I came here to investigate a legitimate complaint. What I found is a man trying to use false papers to kidnap a lawfully married woman. I suggest you take Mr. Callahan's generous offer and leave Dusty Hollow immediately. For a moment, rage twisted Theodore's features into something ugly. Then greed won. He snatched the pouch from Jack's hand. Fine, but I want that document now. Official and witnessed. Judge Franklin produced paper and pen. Within minutes, Theodore had signed away any claim to his sister. The document witnessed by 6 citizens. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. You think you've won, he said to Eliza. But blood tells you're still a Crane, still the daughter of a failure and sister of worse. He'll tire of you when he realizes what you really are. What she really is, Jack said clearly, is brave, kind, hard-working, and beloved, which makes her nothing like you at all. Theodore slammed out, his men trailing behind. In the silence that followed, Eliza realized she was shaking. Jack's arms came around her, solid and sure. It's over, he murmured. He can't touch you now. Mama, Molly tugged at her skirts, face anxious. Are you sad? This is supposed to be a happy day? Eliza knelt, gathering her new daughter close. I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just very, very relieved. Good, can we have cake now? Despite everything, laughter bubbled up. Yes, my darling, we can definitely have cake. The wedding celebration, small as it was, continued at the Morrison house. Mary had prepared a simple feast, and someone had brought out a fiddle. But Eliza couldn't fully relax. Theodore was handled, yes, but Brennan remained a threat, and the town itself. Her fears proved founded when, an hour into the celebration, new visitors arrived. Clara Whitmore swept in like an avenging angel in burgundy silk, accompanied by Victoria Hutchinson and Eleanor Price. The music stopped. Conversations died. Clara's gaze fixed on Eliza with laser intensity. I heard the most extraordinary news, Clara said, her cultured voice carrying easily through the sudden silence. That Jack Callahan married his hired help. I simply had to see if it was true. Clara, Jack's voice held warning. This is a private celebration. Oh, I'm not staying. Clara's smile was sharp as glass. I just wanted to offer my congratulations and to meet the woman who succeeded where I failed. She glided closer to Eliza, who stood her ground despite every instinct screaming to flee. Clara was everything Eliza wasn't elegant, educated, accepted, everything Jack should have chosen. My dear, Clara continued, voice dripping honey over poison. What a remarkable story. From auction block to altar in, 3 months you must share your secrets. There's no secret, Eliza said quietly. Just love. Love! Clara laughed, bright and false. How romantic. Tell me, Does love erase the past? Does it wash away the stain of what you were, what you've done?
Clara, enough, Jack warned. But Clara wasn't finished. I knew Jack's first wife. You know, Sarah was a lady, gentle, refined, above reproach. The whole town mourned when she passed. But you, her gaze raked Eliza from head to toe. You're no Sarah. No, Eliza agreed, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. I'm not Sarah. I'm Eliza. I've been bought and sold, beaten and betrayed. I've survived things that would have broken a gentler woman. I have scars Sarah never knew and strength she never needed. You're right, I'm nothing like her. But Jack didn't marry me to replace her. He married me for who I am. Clara's perfect composure cracked. You think this will last, that the town will accept you, that someday people won't whisper about the fallen woman Jack Callahan took to his bed? They'll whisper, Eliza acknowledged. People always do when they've nothing better to occupy their minds, but their whispers can't touch what Jack and I have built, what we'll continue to build. Built on a foundation of sin. Built on a foundation of redemption. Mary Morrison interrupted, stepping forward. Of second chances and grace, concepts you seem to have forgotten. Clara, for all your church attendance. Clara turned on her. You'd defend her, this creature who saved a child's life. Sam interjected. Who works harder than any 3 women I know. Who brings joy to a house that's known too much sorrow. Who makes the best biscuits in the territory? Molly piped up, causing nervous laughter. Clara looked around. Seeing allies become opponents. Even Victoria and Eleanor seemed uncomfortable with the scene. This isn't over, Clara said finally. The town won't stand for this transgression. You'll see. The town can mind its own business, Judge Franklin said mildly. As should you, Miss Whitmore. Now, I believe you are leaving. Clara swept out, her followers trailing uncertainly behind. In her wake, the celebration felt fragile, tainted. Don't let her spoil this, Mary said firmly. Today is about joy, not jealousy. But Eliza saw the looks, heard the whispers starting already. Clara had planted seeds of doubt that would grow in the fertile soil of small-town gossip. I need some air, she murmured to Jack. She found herself in Mary's garden, breathing in the scent of late roses. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Behind her, she heard Jack's footsteps. I'm sorry, he said. I should have known Clara would... Were you courting her before I came? He sighed. The town thought I should be. Clara thought I should be. She'd been widowed 2 years. I'd been widowed 3. It seemed logical. But I couldn't see past Sarah's memory to even consider it. And Molly never took to her. Children know, don't they, who's real and who's wearing a mask? She's everything I'm not, Eliza said softly. Beautiful, refined, accepted. Cold, calculating, and cruel, Jack finished. Also rich, which apparently makes up for a multitude of sins in some folks' eyes. She could give you and Molly so much. Jack turned her to face him. She could give us money. You give us life. There's no comparison. The town will listen to her. Things will get harder. Then we'll weather it together. He cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. I told you this morning I choose you. I'll keep choosing you every day for the rest of our lives. Let Clara and her coven gossip. We know the truth of what we have. And what's that? A family, a home, a love worth fighting for. He smiled. Also, Molly's right, you do make the best biscuits in the territory. Despite everything, she laughed. Is that why you married me, for my biscuits? Among other reasons. His voice dropped. Intimate. Speaking of which, don't you think it's time we went home? It's been a long day, and we've yet to properly celebrate being married. Heat flooded her cheeks, but also something else, anticipation. Not fear, This was Jack, who'd shown her nothing but gentleness. Jack, who'd waited for her to heal, to trust, to choose him in return. "Yes," she said simply. "Let's go home." They collected Molly, who'd fallen asleep in Mary's parlor, and made their farewells. The ride home was quiet. Molly dozed between them, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. "Are you happy?" Jack asked suddenly. Eliza considered the question. The day had brought confrontations with both Theodore and Clara, reminders that the past wouldn't release its hold easily. But it had also brought belonging people standing up for her, defending her, accepting her as one of their own. And most of all, it had brought the solid weight of Jack's ring on her finger, the promise of a future built together. "Yes," she said, meaning it. "Despite everything, yes, I'm happy." "Good." He reached over Molly's sleeping form to squeeze her hand. "Because I plan to keep you that way." As the ranch came into view, lamplight glowing warm in the windows, Eliza felt something settle in her chest. This was home now, officially and legally. She was Eliza Callahan, wife and mother, with all the protection those titles afforded. Theodore couldn't touch her. Clara couldn't break her. The town couldn't drive her away. She was exactly where she belonged. Later, after Molly was tucked in bed and the house had settled into nighttime quiet, Jack led Eliza to their room now. Not just his, he'd moved her things earlier. And seeing her simple possessions mingled with his made her throat tight with emotion. "Eliza," he said softly, taking her hands. "I know you've been hurt. I won't rush you or demand anything you're not ready to give. We can take this as slow as you need." She looked at this man, her husband, and saw only patience and love. No expectations, no entitlement, just gentle understanding. It broke something open in her chest, something that had been frozen since Theodore's betrayal. "I'm not afraid," she whispered. "Not of you, never of you." But I don't know how to be a wife. What if I disappoint you?" "Impossible." He drew her closer. "You've already given me more than I dared hope for. The rest we'll figure out together, like everything else." She rose on her toes, pressed her lips to his. "Then teach me, Jack Callahan, teach me how to be yours." What followed was a lesson in tenderness, in patience, in the kind of love that heals old wounds while creating new bonds. Jack was gentle, reverent, treating her like something precious rather than something purchased. And when the last walls finally crumbled between them, Eliza understood at last what it meant to belong to someone by choice rather than force. Afterward, lying in Jack's arms with moonlight painting silver squares on the floor, she marveled at the journey that had brought her here. From auction block to marriage bed, from bondage to freedom, from loneliness to love. "What are you thinking?" Jack murmured, his voice drowsy with contentment. "That I'm home," she said simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm truly home." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Welcome home, Mrs. Callahan." Outside, a coyote called to its mate, and the wind whispered secrets through the mesquite. But inside the Callahan house, all was peace. A family slept safe and sound, united not by blood but by choice, not by law but by love. Tomorrow would bring its challenges. Clara would spread her poison. The town would gossip. There might be other threats, other tests. But tonight, Eliza Callahan rested secure in her husband's arms, her daughter sleeping down the hall, her future bright with possibility. She was home. She was loved. She was free. The fever came without warning. One moment, Molly was playing with her dolls on the porch, chattering happily about the tea party she was hosting for them. The next, she swayed on her feet, her face flushed and eyes glassy. "Mama," she called weakly, the words still new enough on her lips to make Eliza's heart clench every time. "I don't feel good." Eliza dropped the basket of laundry she'd been carrying and rushed to the child, pressing a hand to her forehead. The heat radiating from Molly's skin made her gasp. "Jack!" she called, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "Jack, come quickly!" By the time Jack arrived from the barn, Eliza had already carried Molly inside and laid her on the sofa. The child's breathing was rapid and shallow, her small body trembling despite the warmth of the day. "How long has she been like this?" Jack asked, his face tight with worry. "It came on sudden. She was fine this morning, and then—" Eliza wrung out a cool cloth and placed it on Molly's forehead. "We need Doc Morrison." "I'll ride for him now." Jack was already reaching for his hat. "Sam can—" "No," Eliza's voice was firm. "You stay with her. I'll go." "Eliza, I'm the better rider, and you know it. Besides, she'll want her daddy if she wakes." She was already tying on her bonnet. "Keep her cool. Give her water if she'll take it. I'll be back as fast as I can." Jack caught her arm as she passed. "Be careful. Take Tempest. He's the fastest." She nodded, pressed a quick kiss to his cheek, then ran for the barn. As she saddled Tempest with hands that wanted to shake, she could hear Jack's voice through the open window, low and soothing as he talked to Molly. The sound strengthened her resolve. That little girl had given her a reason to live again. Now it was Eliza's turn to fight for her. The ride to town had never seemed longer. Eliza pushed Tempest hard, the landscape blurring past as they thundered down the dusty road. In her mind, she saw Molly's flushed face, heard her labored breathing. Memories of her own mother's final illness crashed over her, the fever that wouldn't break, the helplessness of watching someone you loved slip away. "Not Molly," she whispered into the wind. "Please, God, not Molly." She found Doc Morrison at his home, just sitting down to lunch. One look at her face and he was reaching for his medical bag. "Molly?" he asked. "High fever. Came on sudden." She was breathing hard from the ride. "She's burning up. Doc!" "I'll get my buggy." "No time. Can you ride?" He nodded grimly. Within minutes, they were racing back to the ranch, Eliza leading the way on Tempest while Doc Morrison followed on his steady mare. The return journey seemed even longer, each moment stretching like an eternity. They arrived to find Jack pacing the porch, Molly in his arms. She was limp as a rag doll, her head lolling against his shoulder. "She won't wake up properly," Jack said, his voice cracking. "She opens her eyes but doesn't see me." Doc Morrison took charge immediately, carrying Molly to her room with practiced efficiency. Eliza and Jack hovered in the doorway as he examined her, checking her throat, listening to her chest, feeling the glands in her neck. "Scarlet fever," he pronounced finally, and Eliza's knees nearly buckled. She'd seen scarlet fever sweep through communities, taking children like wheat before a scythe. "Can you help her?" Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'll do everything I can," Doc Morrison said. "But the next 48 hours will be critical. We need to break the fever and keep her hydrated. One of you should be with her at all times." "Both of us will," Eliza said firmly. "Tell us what to do." What followed were the longest 2 days of Eliza's life. She and Jack took turns sponging Molly's burning skin with cool water, coaxing drops of water between her cracked lips, whispering prayers and promises and pleas. The house fell silent except for Molly's labored breathing and the creak of the rocking chair where one of them always sat vigil. Clara came on the second day, sweeping into the sick room uninvited. "I heard about poor little Molly," she said, though her eyes were on Eliza. "Such a tragedy. Of course, children do seem to take ill more often in unsettled households." "Get out!" Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my house before I throw you out." "I'm only trying to help. I've brought some of Cook's beef broth." "If you want to help," Eliza interrupted, not looking up from where she was bathing Molly's face, "then pray. Otherwise, leave. Your presence is neither wanted nor helpful." Clara's face flushed. "You dare?" "I dare anything for this child." Eliza finally looked at her, and something in her expression made Clara step back. I've sat by her bed for 36 hours. I've breathed every breath with her, counted every heartbeat. I've bargained with God and offered my own life in trade for hers. So yes, Miss Whitmore, I dare. Now get out before I forget I'm a lady." Clara left, but not before delivering a parting shot. "When she dies, they'll all know it's because you brought curse into this house." The words hit like physical blows, voicing Eliza's deepest fear. What if Clara was right? What if her presence, her past, had somehow invited this illness? "Don't," Jack said roughly, reading her face. "Don't you dare blame yourself." "But what if—" "No." He crossed to her, gripped her shoulders. "Molly got sick because children get sick. It has nothing to do with you except that you're here to help her through it. We're going to save her. Eliza, together." Through that second night, Molly's fever climbed dangerously high. She thrashed and cried out, caught in delirium's grip. Once, she opened her eyes and looked straight at Eliza. "Mama," she whispered, "don't let the bad men take you." "Never, sweetheart," Eliza promised, tears streaming down her face. "I'm right here. I'll always be right here." Doc Morrison came and went, looking increasingly grave. He spoke of preparing for the worst, of God's will, of the mysteries of providence. Eliza wanted to scream at him to stop talking and do something, but she knew he was doing all he could. It was near dawn of the third day when the crisis came. Molly's breathing grew shallow and rapid, her small body seizing with convulsions. Jack held her while Eliza packed ice around her burning form, both of them beyond tears, beyond prayers, beyond everything but fierce determination. "Fight, little bird," Jack whispered against his daughter's hair. "Fight for us." "Come back to us, sweetheart," Eliza added. "There's so much life waiting for you. So many tea parties and barn kittens and sunny days. Come back and I'll teach you to make biscuits. I'll read you every story ever written. I'll never leave you, never stop loving you. Just please, please come back." And then, like the sun breaking through storm clouds, the fever broke. Molly's breathing deepened, steadied. The burning heat faded from her skin. She opened her eyes, truly opened them, and saw them both. "Mama, Daddy, why are you crying?" They were crying harder now, but with relief so profound it was almost painful. Eliza gathered Molly close, feeling the steady beat of her heart, the miracle of her breathing. "We're just happy, sweetheart," she managed. "So very happy." Doc Morrison, summoned by Sam, confirmed what they already knew: the crisis had passed. Molly would need careful tending for weeks yet, but she would recover. "I've seen many things in my years of practice," he said, studying Eliza with thoughtful eyes. "But I've rarely seen such devoted nursing. You saved her life, Mrs. Callahan. You and Jack both, but especially you. You never gave up, never stepped away. That kind of love makes a difference." After he left, Eliza found herself on the porch, needing air and space to process the emotional storm of the past days. Jack joined her, looking as exhausted as she felt. "She called for you," he said quietly. "In her fever dreams. She called for her mama, not Sarah, not some memory you." "I know." The weight of that responsibility, that gift, was almost overwhelming. "I can't replace Sarah. Jack, I wouldn't want to. But Molly chose you, just like I chose you." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We're a family, Eliza. Not perfect, not without scars, but real." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "Clara said, Clara can go to hell." The profanity, so unlike Jack, made her blink. "I mean it. Her and everyone else who thinks they have the right to judge us. You sat by our daughter's bed for 3 days. You fought death himself for her. That's all that matters." "Our daughter." The words settled into Eliza's heart like seeds in fertile soil. "Inside," Molly called weakly for water. Eliza rose immediately, but Jack caught her hand. "I love you," he said simply. "I should say it more, but I love you. Eliza Callahan, for who you are, who you've become, who you're still becoming. All of it.
I love you too, she whispered. More than I thought possible. You and Molly both.
They went inside together to tend to their daughter, and if the house felt more like home than ever, if the shadows seemed less dark and the future more bright, well, that was what love did. It transformed everything it touched. Over the following weeks, as Molly slowly regained her strength, word spread through Dusty Hollow about Eliza's tireless vigil. Some, like Clara and her circle, dismissed it as mere duty. But others, many others, began to see Eliza differently. Not as the woman from the auction block, but as the mother who'd fought death for her child. Mary Morrison organized a group of church ladies to bring meals, giving Eliza time to rest. Even Victoria Hutchinson sent a jar of her famous preserves with a note hoping for Molly's swift recovery. The tide of public opinion was turning, slowly but surely. One afternoon, as Molly napped and Eliza dozed in the chair beside her, she woke to find a familiar figure in the doorway. Sam stood there, hat in hand, his weathered face softer than she'd ever seen it. "Just wanted to check on the little one," he said gruffly. "She's better every day," Eliza assured him. "Would you like to sit with her a while? I know she'd love to see you when she wakes." He nodded, taking the chair she vacated. As she moved to leave, he spoke again. "You're good for them, for this place. Sarah would have liked you." Coming from the taciturn foreman, it was a speech of epic proportions. Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Sam. That means more than you know." That evening, as the family gathered for a quiet supper, Molly propped up with pillows but insisting she was well enough to eat at the table, Eliza looked around at the faces she'd come to love so dearly. Jack, strong and steady, the man who'd seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Molly, bright and resilient, the child who'd given her purpose and joy. Even Sam, loyal and protective, who'd become like family. "Mama," Molly said, her voice still weak but eyes bright, "when I'm all better, can we plant a garden, a big one with flowers and vegetables, and maybe a special place for butterflies?" "Of course, sweetheart. We'll plant the most beautiful garden in all of Arizona." "Good," Molly smiled. "Because when I was sick, I dreamed about gardens, about how they grow even after hard winters. Like us, we're growing too. Aren't we growing into a real family? Out of the mouths of babes," Eliza thought, exchanging glances with Jack. "Yes, my darling, we're growing into a real family." And they were, despite everything the past that haunted, the gossips who condemned, the challenges that tested. They were becoming what all of them had needed most, a family bound not by perfection but by choice, not by ease but by endurance, not by blood but by love. The shadows hadn't vanished entirely. Clara still watched from afar with envious eyes. The town still whispered, though more softly now, and somewhere in Eliza's heart, the scars of old betrayals still ached on cold nights. But here in this kitchen, with lamplight painting golden circles and love warming the air better than any fire, those shadows seemed very far away. They'd weathered the storm, they'd fought for each other and won. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight they were simply the Callahans, Jack, Eliza, and Molly, a family forged in fire and tested by trial, stronger for all they'd endured. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Spring arrived early that year, painting the desert in impossible colors, purple lupines, golden poppies, and the delicate pink of prickly pear blossoms. Eliza stood in what would soon be their lavender garden, her hands deep in the rich soil she and Jack had hauled from the creek bottom. 6 months had passed since Molly's illness. 6 months of healing and growth and slow acceptance from the town. "Mama, look!" Molly ran toward her, fully recovered and bursting with her usual energy. "The first lavender shoot, I saw it." Eliza smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Show me, sweetheart." Together they knelt by the tiny green shoot pushing through the earth the first of the lavender plants they'd ordered from a catalog, a promise of the purple fields to come. "It's so small," Molly observed. "Will it really grow big and smell pretty?" "With love and care and patience. Yes." Eliza smoothed her daughter's hair. "The best things usually start small. Like our family." "Exactly like our family." The sound of horses drew their attention. A fine carriage was approaching, unusual for their remote ranch. Eliza stood, shading her eyes against the morning sun, and felt her heart sink when she recognized the passenger. Clara Whitmore stepped down from the carriage, but this wasn't the imperious Clara of months past. Her face was drawn, her usual perfect appearance slightly disheveled. She approached slowly, as if uncertain of her welcome. "Mrs. Callahan," she said formally. I need to speak with you." Eliza glanced at Molly. "Sweetheart, why don't you go help Daddy in the barn?" "But Mama—" "Go on now. Tell him we have a visitor." After Molly scampered off, Eliza faced Clara squarely. "What brings you here, Miss Whitmore?" Clara's composure cracked. "I'm leaving Dusty Hollow. Tomorrow. I'm returning to San Francisco to live with my sister." "I see." "No, I don't think you do." Clara twisted her gloves in her hands. "I came to apologize, and to confess something that's been eating at me since your wedding day." Eliza waited, saying nothing. "I was wrong about you, about everything." The words seemed to physically pain Clara. "When I said those cruel things, when I tried to turn the town against you, it wasn't really about you at all. It was about me, about my jealousy and bitterness and the ugly truth that I'm not the good Christian woman I pretended to be." "Clara, please, let me finish." Clara drew a shaky breath. "After Sarah died, I assumed Jack would turn to me. We were the obvious match, similar backgrounds, similar standing. But he never saw me that way. And when you came, when I saw how he looked at you, how Molly bloomed under your care, I couldn't bear it. You had everything I wanted, and you hadn't even asked for it. I never meant to." "I know." Clara's smile was sad. "That's what makes it worse. You never schemed or manipulated. You just loved them. And they loved you back. It should have been beautiful to witness. Instead, I let it poison me." She reached into her reticule and pulled out an envelope. "When Molly was ill, when you sat by her bed for days, I saw what real love looked like, what real motherhood looked like, and I was ashamed. It's not much, but it's what I can do." Eliza took the envelope, surprised to find it heavy. Inside was a substantial bank draft and a letter. "The money is for Molly's education," Clara explained. "The letter is for you. It's a character reference, signed by me and witnessed by Judge Franklin. It states that I've known you to be a woman of good moral character, devoted to your family, and a positive influence on our community. If anyone questions your past again, you have my word to counter it." Eliza stared at the papers, speechless. This was more than an apology. It was a public reversal of everything Clara had said and done. "Why?" she finally managed. "Because it's right. Because I've spent months letting hatred eat me alive. And I'm tired of it. Because maybe, if I do this one good thing, I can start becoming the woman I always pretended to be." Impulsively, Eliza reached out and took Clara's hand. "We all have our shadows to overcome. Thank you for this. I hope you find peace in San Francisco." Clara squeezed her hand briefly, then stepped back. "Take care of them, Eliza. They're lucky to have you." As the carriage rolled away, Jack appeared from the barn, Molly bouncing beside him. "Was that Clara Whitmore?" "Yes." What did she want? Eliza showed him the letter and bank draft. Jack whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned. Pardon my language." "She's trying to make amends. People can change. Jack, even people like Clara." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Jack pulled out a newspaper from town. "There's something you should see." He pointed to an announcement. "The Dusty Hollow School Board is seeking a part-time teacher for young children. Applicants should be of good moral character with experience in child-rearing and basic education."
Jack.
"You taught Molly her letters and numbers? You've been helping Sam with his English. Why not?" "They'd never accept me. My past is the past." He tapped Clara's letter. "You have a character reference from one of the town's leading ladies. Doc Morrison would vouch for you. And Mary, too. Times are changing. Eliza, maybe it's time to stop hiding and start living." The idea terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. What if they reject me? Then they're fools. But what if they don't? 3 weeks later, Eliza stood before the school board, her palms damp but her voice steady as she presented her qualifications. The board members, including Victoria Hutchinson, listened with expressions ranging from skeptical to thoughtful. When they called for character witnesses, she expected Mary Morrison and perhaps Doc. She didn't expect Sam Torres to stand up in the back of the room. "This woman saved my boss's daughter." He said in his careful English that Eliza had helped him improve. "She works harder than any 2 people I know. She treats everyone with respect, from the richest rancher to an old Mexican cowhand. If she's good enough to raise Molly Callahan, she's good enough to teach our children." Others stood too, the owner of the general store, whose young son Eliza had helped with arithmetic. The blacksmith's wife, whose daughter Eliza had taught to embroider. Even Reverend Edison, who spoke of redemption and second chances. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Eliza Callahan would be Dusty Hollow's new primary teacher, 3 days a week. Walking out of the schoolhouse, Eliza felt as if she were floating. Jack swept her into a spinning hug right there on Main Street, not caring who saw. "I'm proud of you, Mrs. Callahan, so damn proud." "Language, Mr. Callahan," she teased. "I'm a school teacher now. I must set a proper example." The months that followed brought a rhythm of deep contentment, mornings in the lavender garden, which grew more fragrant by the day, afternoons at the schoolhouse, where children who'd once whispered about her now called her Mrs. Callahan, with genuine affection. Evenings on the ranch with Jack and Molly, their little family complete and thriving. The first harvest of lavender came in late summer. Eliza and Molly picked the fragrant stalks together, bundling them to dry in the barn. The scent filled the whole ranch, carrying on the wind like a blessing. "We should sell some in town," Molly suggested. "People would buy it for their clothes and such." "That's a wonderful idea," Eliza said. "We could make sachets and soaps, maybe even lavender honey from the beehives." And so the Callahan Ranch became known not just for cattle and horses, but for the fields of purple lavender that bloomed impossibly in the desert, tended by a woman who'd bloomed just as impossibly in a harsh world. One evening, as summer turned to fall, Eliza found Jack standing at the edge of the lavender field, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, slipping her arm through his. "I was just thinking about how different life is from a year ago. This time last year, I was a bitter widower going through the motions. Molly was lonely. The ranch was surviving but not thriving. And then an angel appeared at a livestock auction, though she didn't look much like an angel at the time." Eliza laughed. "No, I imagine I didn't. More like something the cat dragged in." "You looked like someone who needed saving. Turns out, we were the ones who needed saving. You saved us, Eliza." "We saved each other," she corrected. "That's what family does." They stood together watching the stars emerge, the lavender releasing its scent into the cooling air. From the house came the sound of Molly practicing her piano, another addition made possible by Eliza's teaching salary and careful management. "No regrets?" Jack asked softly. Eliza thought of the journey that had brought her here, the pain, the fear, the desperate flight from a life of bondage. She thought of Theodore, who'd never contacted them again after taking Jack's money, of Brennan, who'd left town after a scandal involving forged documents, of Clara, who sent letters from San Francisco full of genuine warmth. But mostly she thought of this standing in a field of lavender she'd planted with her own hands, beside a man who loved her truly, listening to their daughter make music in a house that had become a home. "No regrets," she said firmly, "not one." As if summoned by their contentment, Molly burst from the house. "Mama, Daddy, come see the moon is huge tonight." They let their daughter lead them to the porch, where indeed a harvest moon hung enormous and golden in the sky. Molly settled between them on the porch swing, chattering about school and friends and the new foal in the barn. This was what love looked like. Eliza thought, not the desperate, grasping things she'd known before, but this quiet certainty, this knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, they'd face it together. This trust built not on words but on actions, on choices made again and again to stand by each other. "Tell us a story, Mama," Molly requested, snuggling closer. "What kind of story?" "A true one, about someone brave who found where they belonged." Eliza smiled, pressing a kiss to her daughter's head. "Once upon a time, there was a woman who thought she'd lost everything. But sometimes, when we lose what we think we need, we find what we truly need instead." As she wove the tale their tale, disguised just enough to be bedtime appropriate, Eliza marveled at how far they'd all come. From auction block to schoolhouse, from stranger to wife and mother, from surviving to thriving. The lavender fields would bloom for years to come, spreading purple across the desert like hope made visible. Children would learn their letters at her knee and carry those lessons into their own futures. And here on this porch, a family would continue to choose each other, day after day, season after season. Because that's what love was. Eliza had learned, not possession or control, not desperate need or frightened clinging. Love was choosing to stay when you were free to leave. Love was fighting for each other against illness and prejudice and the shadows of the past. Love was planting lavender in the desert and believing it would grow. Love was coming home at last to a place you'd never been before but recognized in your bones. Love was Jack's steady presence and Molly's boundless affection. Love was being Eliza Jane Callahan, teacher, mother, wife, a woman who'd refused to let her past define her future. The moon climbed higher. The lavender whispered in the breeze. And on the porch of a ranch in Arizona, a family sat close together, complete and content and home. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, redemption, and new beginnings in the Old West. If you're enjoying these tales while driving through the night, working late, or just relaxing at home, I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts about Eliza and Jack's journey together. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Wild West Night for more authentic Western romance stories. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover these tales of courage and love on the frontier. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own happy endings.